So, by quick show of hands, who here enjoys watching or participating in sports? Okay, well, as sports fans, we watch games mainly for entertainment purposes. And with the current policies for regulating performance-enhancing drugs, there's a lot of players getting away with steroid use and other performance-enhancing drugs. This creates a unequal playing field and leads to player suspensions that prevent us from watching sports as competitive and fair as they can be. I became interested in this topic because I've always been a sports fan and I want to see the best competition possible, and because Barry Bonds went to my high school and a friend of mine's dad got caught up in his steroid scandal. So steroids have been present in society for decades, and major sports have put up regulations to try and prevent them. Many of these have been ineffective, and I think legalizing steroids in major sports is a plausible solution for making sports more fair and competitive. So first, let's investigate the problem of performance-enhancing drugs in sports and see why legalizing them will be an effective solution. So the main problem is that many athletes are getting away with performance-enhancing drugs, and a lot of athletes are afraid to use them because they are illegal. So some athletes end up being bigger and stronger and are able to perform better. And so in an article by Damian Riley called Angel Hernandez, I no longer do athletes, but pretty much everyone else does, about Angel Hernandez, a well-known chemist that provided performance-enhancing drugs to Olympic boxers. He points out that there are many flaws in the current regulations and systems that test for performance-enhancing drugs, and that it's very easy to exploit these flaws. But what really is the problem with performance-enhancing drugs? Society views them negatively because they're associated with cheating due to their ability to enhance muscle growth. And pro sports have outlawed them for years because they claim that it creates an unequal playing field and there are health concerns for the players. Many of these regulations haven't been particularly effective, though. There are many examples of athletes who avoid punishment for their use of performance-enhancing drugs or go completely undetected. I'm going to go over a few examples of them. According to the New York Post article, quotes Lance Armstrong's legacy, published on October 12, 2012, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency reported that the USPS team doping conspiracy was specifically designed to evade detection. Armstrong was able to go through 500 to 600 tests while doping and still was not caught. This is proof that the current testing methods for performance-enhancing drugs are not very effective. In Ruiz and Schwartz's article, Insider, State-Run Doping-Fueled Olympians, published on May 3, 2016, it relays that the country's anti-doping agency that dozens of Russian athletes at the 2014 Winter Games in Sochi, including at least 15 medal winners, were part of a state-run doping program that was planned to ensure dominance in the game. None of these athletes were caught because they had an insider that was tainting urine samples. This is another example of a way that athletes can avoid detection of performance-enhancing drugs. The last example is the Milwaukee Brewers left fielder Ryan Braun, who was also caught using performance-enhancing drugs. Linda Robinson mentions in her article, Ryan Braun comes home to Miami, but will he come clean? Published in the Daily Cardinal on February 10, 2017, that Braun overturned his original 50-game suspension by appealing to a technicality in the testing process, in which he claimed that his urine sample was left in the basement over the weekend and therefore it was contaminated. and he was able to continue playing without suspension for 2 years until he finally admitted on his own terms that he was using performance-enhancing drugs and accepted this suspension. So all of these are examples of ways that athletes can go about evading detection of performance-enhancing drugs or evading punishment. Also, a lot of athletes who do get caught using performance-enhancing drugs get suspended, which leads to a lot of people not being able to see their favorite players play. One example of this is Houston Texans linebacker Brian Cushing, who was suspended for 10 games for performance-enhancing drugs violation. His 10-game suspension is an example of teams losing a key player and becoming less competitive because of it. So with these regulations in place, nothing will really get better as competitors are completely evading punishment and going undetected using performance-enhancing drugs. So after considering many solutions for this problem, I think that legalizing performance-enhancing drugs and making it available to all players is the best way to make major sports more competitive and fair for everyone. Legalizing performance-enhancing drugs would establish equal competition for everyone and eliminate many unnecessary suspensions. Curtis Umura notes in his article, Legalize Steroids in Baseball, the game will only get better, published on April 29, 2014, how the legalization would finally establish an equal playing field throughout sports, as all athletes would have the same access to these steroids. For some, it can be as simple as using albuterol to help asthma for running, and for others, it can mean using steroids to get stronger and improve their performance. Who are we to tell athletes what they can and can't do to be the best? After all, isn't that what we're striving for, the best? The health concerns about steroids aren't really a problem in this solution because athletes are doing it already, and if they're legalized, they'll know more about the side effects of performance-enhancing drugs, and they'll be able to prevent them better. According to an article by Dr. Deepak Hawali, Legalizing Performance-Enhancing Drugs, an opinion, legalizing performance-enhancing drugs will cause more research to be done about them, and therefore athletes will be able to minimize the side effects and performance-enhancing drug abuse. So the only real way for legalization to be put in place is for athletes to bring awareness, or athletes and fans to bring awareness for legalization to the World Anti-Doping Agency through petitioning and campaigning. Making sure the World Anti-Doping Agency is aware of this solution to the performance-enhancing drug problem is important because they're the only ones who can put it into effect on a global scale. So if you're a sports fan, this is the time to petition. Let the World Anti-Doping Agency know that you want performance-enhancing drugs to be legalized to create a fair, competitive, and enjoyable playing field for pro sports. Although steroids have been frowned upon and banned throughout sports for 28 years, they're still being used discreetly and participants are still being viewed as cheaters. With the legalization of steroids, players will all have the same accessibility, so the playing field will be equal for everyone. As sports fans, will you stand idly by as players are suspended and competition levels fall, or will you join me in helping athletes gain freedom to excellence?